everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to be brief before throwing it open for questions. Obviously, a lot of excitement around here today. Walking through the clubhouse, players and staff have what seems to be an added spring in their step and an added energy. This is a team that has accomplished a great deal despite the adversities that they had faced over the course of the season. And as we start to see some of our injured players return, the fact that we were able to add and address what we felt were the potential needs as we headed down the stretch and into October was of the utmost importance to us. And the vibe in there right now is extremely positive and excited about what lies ahead, hopefully for the next 3 months. With that, I will throw it open to questions.
Scott Merkin, go ahead, Merk.
Rick, I guess a couple-part question here. What was the last couple? I know you work on this for a while, but the last couple days, especially like for you guys in the front office, and then just talk a little bit about each guy you acquired and why it was important to the cause of not just winning the division but going for the whole thing this year.
Sure. Look, Lurie Garcia and Danny Mendick both did a very solid job filling in the absence of Nick Madrigal, but we felt moving Lurie into the super utility role in which he had thrived for the last several years was of the utmost importance. And we wanted to find some stability day in and day out for the lineup in that second base position. Cesar provides us with someone who not only obviously comes with a Gold Glove resume and has found a nice power stroke over the course of this season, but as a switch hitter who provides a professional at bat to go with the solid defense and is a nice balancing factor for this lineup. Tepera, he's had those in Chicago on this call who have covered both clubs knows how strong of a season he's had. He's been effective against both lefties and righties. They've used him in a variety of roles, and he's a very fine get for any team down the stretch run here. Lastly, Craig Kimbrel, obviously the resume speaks for itself. As I discussed with Craig a few weeks ago, Kenny and I asked each other, of all the players expected to be moved, let's assume we can only acquire one, who would it be? And he and I had the same answer, and that was the player we acquired today. We view him as playing a key role here, obviously over the next few months, getting us in position for the postseason. But come October, providing Tony and Ethan and Haas with a variety of weapons at the back end to help shorten games. I don't remember the first part of your question because that's how
I think you kind of answered, but I mean, you talked about staying true to the core of this competitive window, but also not overlooking you could win this year. So obviously you get Kimbrel, could be a huge part, but you give up two very good young players in the process in order to get Kimbrel.
And look, parting with Nick Madrigal is not easy. Parting with Cody Hoyer is not easy. Jed will tell you, if he hasn't told you already, how much we fought on that. In the end, those were both key pieces from the Cubs' perspective in order to get the deal done. And we understood going into this process that the only way we were going to secure, especially Kimbrel, was by having the best offer. In the end, that was the cost. We, as I discussed both with Nick and Cody during what I'm sure they both felt were surprising phone calls and ones that I didn't necessarily anticipate making this morning. We made a conscious decision to prioritize today over the distant future. Obviously, both Cesar and Craig are potentially under team control for next year, so we don't view this as a one and done situation with either player. But there was always going to come a point in the course of this rebuild process, as we had talked about from the start, when we had the opportunity to win. And we had to respect those opportunities, and we had to do everything in our power as a front office to maximize those opportunities. And it wasn't going to be easy. We've had to move players in the past that were when we were at the 180-degree opposite point of this rebuild, that it wasn't easy to move established guys you had long-term relationships with, but it was necessary to move the process forward. Today was sort of the diametric opposite of those deals we made back at the winter of 2016, moving players that we had different types of long-term relationships with back to drafting them or acquiring them as kids. But it was essential for us, we feel, to put us in the best position to take the most important and final step in this process.
James?
Well, you kind of stole my thunder a little bit on the question, but you talk about club options. We see club options a lot when you guys are doing your free agent pursuits. Just how in identifying what targets you were going after, how important was that for getting guys who can be part of a 2022 contender as well, and just how difficult was the dance of not trying to strip away too much from the major league team to kind of seek these upgrades?
We weren't looking to. We were trying to avoid robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, and that came up a lot in these conversations. A lot of teams were hitting on our young players that were converting up here, that are producing up here and contributing to what we've been able to do over the course of this season. And along the way, we've had to make some difficult decisions. And in the end, it was Nick and Cody were the ones that we felt begrudgingly were the ones that fed this process the best by executing those deals. The control for 2022 is important. It's real. We aren't viewing this as a one and done situation by any stretch. We didn't view it as such when we started this process in 2016. We want to do everything in our power to extend this window and make this an annual event. So having the added control on both players factored heavily into the decisions to acquire.
Vinny?
Rick, you look at the way baseball teams have used their bullpens in the playoffs over the last few years, and obviously you guys were planning back in the spring to have an elite bullpen, one of the best ones. Now you add these guys to it. What kind of setup do you see this having for your bullpen come October when that unit is, more important than ever, arguably?
Well, part of it, let's take a half step back though, Vinny, before I answer that, in that getting to October is important as well, not just because we're not assuming anything and all the normal baseball axioms about getting ahead of yourself here before you've clinched anything, that winning the division is the most important thing first. This is also about trying to keep guys healthy and strong entering into October. So now, look, Liam has shown he's capable of giving us 6-out saves. Hopefully now the way the bullpen's constructed, that's not going to be too necessary, at least till we get to October. On any given night, whether Craig or Liam is unavailable, the other one probably will be available. So we're able to rest guys, pace them properly, lighten their load. A lot has been made of innings management on starters. You're going to see over the next week or 10 days a little bit different out of us is an effort to help manage that workload and keep guys strong and healthy into October. That's really no different with the bullpen. So part of these acquisitions is to lighten the load a little bit down the stretch run and then put us in a position come October, to answer your question, where we have a dynamic group of relievers who are able to be matched up against the toughest hitters and the most important leverage situations, regardless of where they arise in the game.
Hey guys, we have 7 hand raised. That will be all the 7 that Rick is going to be answering because we have Tony La Russa right after him. Then Jesse Rogers.
Hey, Rick, then 2 quick more follow-ups with Kimbrel. When you traded Quintana to the Cubs, Theo said that he had to pay a tax for that Crosstown deal. Did you feel like you had to do the same with Hoyer and Madrigal?
I almost quoted you. I am going to quote you when you said we gave Quintana to the Cubs. I think was exactly how you said it, Jesse, as you remember. The fact is, that's the reality of doing business when you share a town. I think it's no different with the Yankees and the Mets. It's probably no different with the Giants and A's, or even perhaps the Dodgers and the Angels. We know we have to watch Nick Madrigal for the next 5+ years in a Cub uniform, very likely making an impact and doing damage at the big league level. That's not going to be easy. When we sent Quintana there, or when we gave Quintana to them, as you said, we knew we ran the risk of my kids having to sit through another parade come October. That doesn't sit too well. As a result, when you do those deals, perhaps the cost is a little bit higher than when you're dealing with someone that little bit more out of sight, out of mind, and isn't necessarily going to come back and haunt your family and your fan base quite as easily. So yeah, I think that's part of it. I can't answer. I don't know what the other offers were. I knew that in the end, the Cubs were only going to accept our offer if it was, in their opinion, the best. So we were aggressive and we fought like hell to make it lighter in the end. But when it came time to make a decision, we decided to meet the price.
And a real quick process question, how come Tepera and not Kimbrel together like yesterday? Was it just they were two different lanes?
Just a matter of how markets move. I mean, look, I don't think anyone in the market for a relief pitcher would disagree with the fact that Craig was at the top of the market. There were others, several good ones, one of whom we were able to secure, and it was Ryan, that were starting to move more quickly, but the top of the market waited till the end of the week to get going. So Jed and I had conversations on this for a while. Yesterday, late morning, became clear that there was a quicker path to the Tepera deal and that Craig was going to take more time. So we closed that one and tried to figure out what would happen over the next 24 hours.
Mike Behrman.
Rick, how would you describe how much better you feel about your team and how much more dangerous it is in this moment than, 48 hours ago?
We're better today than we were yesterday. We know that. We're better at the end of this week than we were at the end of last week. We look forward to Luis Robert continuing to progress and joining us over the next few weeks. Yasmani Grandal, not too far behind him. And knock on wood, we continue to build on what we've done over the first 4 months, get healthy, acclimate these new players to our clubhouse, and put ourselves in a position to come October to be a pretty dangerous team. That's the goal.
Bruce Levine.
Rick, congratulations on winning the World Series. I'd like to, if you could give us a little background on, you have two great closers, and you have, certainly during your meetings, you must have discussed, the balance of how Tony's going to use these guys, and, the knowledge that sometimes when a guy is used to closing, other roles have to be considered lesser, and how the individual handles that.
Question being how we're going to use it.
Question is, could you give us a little background in your discussions of was that an important part of your internal discussions before you made that move?
I think a lot of it is knowing the players involved and knowing that my conversation with Craig this morning or early afternoon, whenever it was all about winning championships and him playing a role in helping to put us in the strongest position to get him another ring and to get some of the guys down in that clubhouse their first ring. Liam, since we talked about in the introductory press conference, I think he told you all he'll get the outs when he's called upon. On any given day, one of them may be unavailable and we got the other available. Come October, all bets are off. You get the best guys to get the best outs based on matchups. This gives Tony and Ethan and Haas the opportunity to match up earlier in a ball game now if they so choose. Obviously, over the course of the regular season, that's probably a little less likely than it is in October. But it puts us in a position where we should have a very dynamic and impactful bullpen, regardless of what situation arises in each game.
O'Sullivan.
Hi, Rick. Maybe you just answered this, but I was wondering, did you talk to Liam before this? Because we know I'm sure he would be for it, but just to gauge his thoughts on Craig, because I know they're friends.
Liam's from day one has told us get as many good players around us and let's win a championship, and I'll do whatever you guys need me to do. So that hasn't changed. I saw him a few minutes ago in the clubhouse. He was all smiles. He's talking something about I've got the straight arm, he's got the bent arm or something, and felt everyone, the spirits are very high. Guys are enthusiastic about how this is all going to fit together when the time comes.
Cheryl.
Rick, we kept hearing reports of several teams were in on Craig Kimbrel. How competitive was it for you to get him, knowing that there was other teams that wanted him just as much as you did?
Well, I think that's probably a better question for Jed. Ultimately, we knew there'd be competition for elite players. You know, even there was competition for Tapera. I'm sure there was competition for Cesar Hernandez. A lot of what is out there over the course of the last few days or weeks tends to. It's funny. Everything we read about ourselves, we kind of know, that's not true. That they're like 25% right. But every rumor we read about another team, we're like, oh crap, really? They're involved. So we take it seriously, which is probably kind of ridiculous. So we were cognizant of the fact that there was competition, but we also knew in the end we were going to have to make a very strong offer in order to get a player like Craig Kimbrel.
Last two questions. Ryan McGoffey.
Rick, maybe piggybacking off of that a little bit, knowing that there was only one trade deadline, how were you able, was maneuvering through all of it? And we saw the number of big names. I think it was the most all-stars ever traded in a singular season. Was your ability to maneuver through it with the goal in mind to get the guy you coveted most any different this year or any more challenging?
No, honestly, I don't think that was the one deadline versus two change. I don't think had a huge role in that. It did have a role to an extent and I had a lot of conversations today. It's funny, where you acquire Craig Kimbrel, and I spent the next 2 hours talking about depth pieces with teams that think they're, destined for the postseason. Someone looking for a non-rostered left-handed reliever just in case someone gets hurt, or someone looking for a eighth starter, or what would be an eighth starter for them in order to provide that depth. Simply because you don't have that second opportunity. God forbid something happens in August. You really don't have an avenue other than your own system to address or plug any holes. So guys started pivoting towards depth needs, which was a lot different than it was if there was that second deadline and you had another bite at the apple come August to address anything that was unforeseen on July 30th.
Last question, James Fegan.
Just since you referred to it, what would some of those rotation rest measures look like? Would it involve maybe seeing some of the guys in AAA make starts, and what about some of the areas that I guess you didn't address in terms of how do you guys feel about what you have, the mix you have in right field, or does this speak well of what you think you have going on with a backup catcher right now and Yasmani Grandal's return?
Yes to all of that. We feel good about what Gavin Sheets has done. Obviously, Lurie Garcia has been freed up to head out to right field some as needed. Brian Goodwin, Aloy was out and left the other day and probably looked about as good, albeit in one game, as we've all seen him out there, which makes him a viable option in the outfield too, which could free up Vaughnie over there for right field. Adam Ingles swinging the bat, fantastic. Obviously playing his normal, great defense. And I can't forget the people's choice and Billy Hamilton playing an important role too, going down the stretch. Backup catcher, Seby's doing a fantastic job receiving. Pitchers are very comfortable with him. Zach is getting an opportunity to do more things for us, and we get to learn more about him. But Yaz continues to impress in terms of the pace of his rehab, and we remain optimistic he'll be back soon. As for the rotation, bear with us. You're going to see a few things here in the next 10 days in terms of the timing of how we use guys coming out of the off day and a TBD on Sunday right now. Certainly you alluded to perhaps guys in the minors coming up to make starts. That could happen at some point along the line too, just in order, again, to manage the best we can to try to keep guys healthy and strong and allow them to sprint through the finish line, which hopefully will be sometime around Halloween.